Hi, everyone. My name's Ian. I'm from the UK. I live in California. I'm here to talk about mostly luck, I think, today. If you look at a lot of the breach reports and the root cause analysis of incidents in security, there's a lot of luck, and it's either luck of the adversary or luck of the defender that it didn't get worse. But the thing is, I don't really like the word luck because it implies that you don't have much control over what comes. And so I'm going to talk through a few things today that are off the back of some of the incident response work we do at Arctic Wolf, some of the insights we get from running the second largest security operations center in the world behind credit card payment company. Why should you listen to me? Well, I've been around. You can tell I'm relatively gray, so I'm quite old. I actually started on the front lines. I started in a call center doing tech support and kind of worked my way through IT and through security. I've worked at companies like CrowdStrike and Symantec. I spent a couple of years at a company called Gartner. That's not good. I didn't do it. Anyway, well, just pretend there's a nice thing up here. There we go. I worked at a company called Gartner, which was great because I got to talk to tens of thousands of people just like you, decision makers in IT and in security, and it helped solidify this understanding that every single organization has the same challenges. They all want to transact in the face of a changing threat landscape, growing adversaries, yada, 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 stuff you've already heard before. And now I work for a company called Arctic Wolf. You can come and talk to us a little bit later if you don't know what we do. Like I say, security operations, MDR, where I run product strategy and corporate strategy. Now, I am, unfortunately for you, very, very lazy. And a lot of what I'm about to talk about has already been said before by people way smarter than me. I'm going to start with a guy called Seneca, who was a philosopher of ancient Rome. Everyone familiar with Seneca? He says he said, I should say, because it was a long time ago, luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. And I like this because every single organization has the opportunity to do more preparation and therefore build their luck. How do I know that? Well, if I think about the typical organization today in security, they've got a bunch of tools, AV, network defense, email security, maybe a SIM. Maybe they use a SIM for more than just dumping logs and forgetting about them. Most organizations are kind of stretched from a resource perspective, from a human capital perspective. They don't necessarily have the best processes. They're trying to figure out how to improve their security workflows, their processes internally. But they're getting the same questions. Like almost every organization I talk to comes to me and says, are we at risk? This thing in the news this week, this breach, this vulnerability, how does that affect me? So most organizations have all of these things. They have the tools, they have some people. So they don't need more tools. You don't need to buy more crap because everyone already has everything they need to be successful. Now, I'm going to put a slide up in a second, which is from my friends in the marketing org. But what's not interesting here is the numbers necessarily that we're talking about. And so this is stats that come from our security operations when we onboard customers, when we run their operations and their MDR for them. Now, the numbers are cool, don't get me wrong, but that's not the takeaway. The takeaway is that we can solve all of this for our customers with the stuff they already have. We're not asking them to replace one thing with another. We're not asking them to replace something with another technology or another new acronym or a new chat GTP thing. The issue is they can't manage them. They don't have the opportunity to manage them. They don't have the people, the staff, the time, the resources, the experience to get the best out of them. So what I'm saying is it's not a tools problem in this industry. The reason that organizations get breached is that they can't manage things at scale. And the other reason is that every organization, whether they like it or not, is going to be one of two things. You're either going to be the target for a direct attack at some point, or you're going to be the transport in the supply chain to get someone else. So it's 100% fact. You're going to be either the target or the transport. So what can we do about that? So like I said, I like the way that luck is the combination of preparation. And so there's a few lessons we can learn from the things that we see and the things that our customers see in the world. Now, not usually, but often you'd see cybersecurity presentations now pivot into this chap, Sun Tzu, who will talk about all of these war-related things and how they apply to cybersecurity, but not me. No. I'm going to start with probably 3 or 4 philosophers of our age that I think are a little bit more impressive than our friend Sun Tzu. First one, Qui-Gon Jinn, Jedi Master. Everyone familiar with this fella? Well, he said, always remember your focus determines your reality. And this is good, right? If you think about how broad cybersecurity is, I'm sure you've had much of the different disciplines today. It's not just security, it could be compliance, it can be governance. Cybersecurity and security in general is really, really broad. Even if you narrow it down to something like security, there's this giant chasm of space that you could apply your focus to. So quite often I get asked, I've got limited budget, I've got limited resources, where should I focus my time? Where's the most important place for me as a business leader, as an IT leader, as a security leader, to focus my limited time and resources? Well, focusing on how someone can breach your organization and how someone gets about in your organization. So when someone asks me, how can I spend my dollars? I say it's the point at which people come in and the point at which people are moving around. And if you can focus just on those two, I mean, it's not the perfect world, but you're going to detect and maybe prevent 80, 90% of all of the possible risks, possible attacks that you see coming into your organization. So that was Qui-Gon Jinn, who said, always remember your focus determines your reality. Next wonderful philosopher of our age, Gandalf the Grey, servant of the secret fire, wielder of the flame of Andor. This might be a pretty obvious one, right? It's fairly famous. You shall not pass. So there's a few things you could think about here. Like, does this mean perimeter security? Does this mean authentication? Yes, is the answer. There are a whole bunch of different things that we can take this well-read, learned wizard advice on. The first one is kind of funny for me. So multi-factor authentication, MFA. I feel like as someone that speaks publicly regularly, I've been talking about MFA and encouraging people to sign up to MFA for years, 5, 6 years. If anyone remembers the old tokens that you used to get from RSA with the secure ID things, like MFA is not new. But I think as an industry, we kind of struggle to articulate the usefulness of it, not just within business context, but also someone's personal context. And so where I say security is not just for business, it's for life, one way I like to think about security is really engaging with people, building that security culture. For as long as I've been in security, the security team, the IT team has been basically the punishment stick. Like, nope, you can't do that. If you do this, we'll find out and you'll get fired. Absolutely don't do any of this stuff. We don't really think of it as the enabler. But if we're in 2023, think about how entwined our personal human lives are with the digital economy. Things like multi-factor authentication apply outside of business context, but we sit down as organizations and say, you have to do this because it protects the business, instead of you should be doing this everywhere because it protects your lives. Like, a funny story I have about this one. Anyone familiar with the video game Fortnite? At least heard of it? Got kids that play it? My kid's crazy for Fortnite. It's all they want to play. Text me all the time. In fact, they text me earlier saying, can we play Fortnite, Dad, when I get home from school? But what surprised me about 18 months ago was my kids came home from school, started playing Fortnite, and they're like, Dad, what's 2FA? What does two-factor authentication mean? I'm like, hold on. My kids are, at the time, 11 and 7. And I'm like, all right. So you've asked me a better question than many IT leaders have asked me, in the past week. So like, what does this mean? And so what it turns out is that Epic Games had implemented a policy that in order to buy the skins you get in game, costumes and dances, and to be able to share them with their friends, they had to secure their account, and they had to secure it using multi-factor authentication. And so my kids are asking, they're desperate. They're like, hey, Dad, can you sign us up for this? Can you show us how it works? And so my kids now, 13 and 10, know exactly how multi-factor authentication works. They understand the concept about encryption and the keys that you get associated with each person. Now imagine if you went back to your office and told Steve in accounts that, hey, you can't do anything unless you enable multi-factor authentication. You can't even launch Excel. There would be a riot from people that don't understand the importance of it. So if there's any one takeaway from here, is like, look at Epic Games, look at video games and how they're influencing the younger generation to be better at security. And the last thing on this slide, I've actually put the diagram of some of our research that we published last week, actually, from the Arctic Wolf Labs team. What's really interesting to me here is that we talk in the industry, you'll hear people talking about vulnerabilities all the time. You'll hear even more people talking about cloud misconfiguration and how important it is to make sure that you're running some kind of application or protection that monitors for cloud security configurations. The reality is, 3% of the incident response cases we did, and that's tens of thousands of incidents last year, 3% of those were caused by misconfiguration. The majority of them were what we call external exposure, so a combination of basically remote desktop published to the internet, which again kind of sounds crazy when I say it out loud, but there are a lot of people that leave remote desktop published to the internet. But as a security organization, the culture tends to be blame the end user. This end user did something stupid. This user did something stupid. And we don't really think about how that impacts the security posture. Like, I would much rather, actually, show of hands here, how many of you have organizations where you run phishing tests or you work for a company that does phishing tests? And how many have failed one of those phishing tests? I sure have. Did you feel stupid afterwards? I feel stupid every single day. What I would be looking for out of a phishing test is not the number of people that clicked it so I can call them up and say, hey, dumbass, don't click things, because links are meant to be clicked, right? I would rather see the number of people that clicked the link and then subsequently realized they did something wrong and called the help desk, so that they know, number one, I did something I'm not sure about, but I'm definitely not going to get fired for reporting it. Because the worst thing in the world is when someone gets phished, someone does something silly and thinks, shit, I'm going to get fired. I'm not going to tell anyone. If I don't look at anyone, maybe no one will notice. So building that security culture is really, really important. And I really hope that we can get in a year, 2 years, 3 years, where security isn't the punishment stick that companies use to keep their people in line. Talking of punishment stick, Mike Tyson is our next philosopher for the 1990s. Horrible human being, but he had a great saying: everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Everyone has an incident response plan, I'm assuming. Everyone's organization knows exactly what to do when someone calls up and says, I think I've got ransomware on my machine. Here's a story for you. So I mentioned I was a practitioner. One of my jobs was restoring. Remember when is anyone as old as me, like you had to restore to tape drives, back up to tapes, and then have someone collect the tapes and take them off? So one of my jobs as a sysadmin, well, actually, one of my punishments as a sysadmin, let me skip back. We'd go to the pub on a Friday, and we would all vote on the stupidest thing as a team that someone did or said that week. The person that we decided had done the stupidest thing was on patch management duty, so they were working nights for the next week. The person that did the second silliest thing that week was on backup and restore duty for the following weekend. And that meant we would have an Excel macro that would randomly pick a server name, and we would have to completely take it down to bare metal and restore it from tape. And that sucked because it took a really long time. It took, had to do it out of hours. But you know what? It was really good practice because we knew exactly how long it should take for an Exchange server to start to, populate the services. We knew exactly how long it should take backup exec to spin around and find the tape and start to restore properly. If we didn't know how long that was supposed to be, and we're doing this in the middle of an incident, can you imagine crossing your fingers, looking at your friends going, is this working? I don't know. We've never done this before. And I think there's a good kind of corollary there with information security, is that we don't test our plans often enough. Has anyone been able to unplug your core internet router and see what happens in a business? See if the alarm goes off? You have? Amazing. It's not quite the same thing, but yeah. Think about how buildings. So I'm not going to pretend to know anything about Swedish health and safety law, but certainly in the UK, by law, every building that has more than a few people in it, by law, has to test their fire drill and their evacuation policy every single year. Right, you have to do it. So the alarm goes off. Everyone knows where they need to go. Someone gets a yellow jacket and it's like the marshal, and then you take the register. Everyone knows what to do in an emergency. I don't see many organizations being able to do that with cybersecurity, being able to sit down once a quarter, once a year, and say, do you know what, we're going to unplug something, or we're going to simulate ransomware. We're going to have someone call the help desk and see if they know what to do. Because there are so many times where I hear in these incident response cases of people kind of thinking it was a joke and not really understanding who they contact first, who decides to pull network switches to stop it spreading, who do they call? Is it IT? Is it insurance? Is it the feds, the police? So really trying to understand exactly what you have to do helps your organization not only feel better about the potential incident, but also react better and understand how things should work when everyone's hair's on fire. All right, where are we now? Getting close. So this guy has a name that's very difficult to pronounce. It's Aeschylus, and he was a playwright, and I love the fact that they call a lot of their plays tragedies in Greek history. But his quote that I like is, "All wisdom comes from memory." And what I mean by this is learning from mistakes, whether it's mistakes or incidents that happen in your organization, or generally learning from others. And the reason I want to bring this up is I mentioned it earlier, we launched our threat report last week, which is super cool. There's a whole look back at a lot of the incidents that we did and we helped recover from in 2022, a bunch of predictions about 2023, and some really solid guidance based on the actual incidents that we had on building or improving your security posture. It's a really good read. Some of our threat researchers are extremely good at what we do. The URL's terrible, so there's a QR code. I'm going to leave that up there. Feel free to take a photo. I promise you it's safe. I'm not judging you if you're using your phones to do it. But there's a lot of really interesting stuff. And other things as well. For the most part in cybersecurity, a lot of what we need to do has already been done, has already been documented by someone else. Even on the red team side, even on the adversary side, most adversaries use someone else's proof of concept code. Like everything has already been done. One of the other things I like to point out here is things like CIS controls, CIS, Center for Internet Security. They talk about 6 things that can reduce or remove the potential impacts of 85% of cyber attacks. So take a look at the threat report. There's some really good stuff in there. A few takeaways, because I'm nearly out of time. So I do want to make sure everyone knows that you are the target or the transport. There's no organization that's too small for cybersecurity incidents these days. There are so many credentials for sale that it's a guarantee you're going to be suffering an incident at some point. And whether you're the target accidentally or on purpose, or whether you are the transport, really comes down to the preparation that you can make in front of it. Educating staff and colleagues is critical, honestly. Like not treating security as a punishment stick. Like people should not only hear from security when they're in trouble. Really building a culture of security comes from explaining why security is critical to them as a human, not to you as a business. Ultimately, if you fired them tomorrow, they're going to be annoyed, right? And they would probably not care less about your security, but build into your awareness training the concept of the things you do in your personal life and the things you do in your business life around cybersecurity should be pretty much the same. I keep having to say it, multi-factor authentication is not a luxury, it's a necessity. I do still hear a lot of people saying, we just don't have time to roll out multi-factor authentication. We can't get this out to 500, 1,000 employees. Don't let good be the enemy of perfect. No, don't get perfect be the enemy of good, right? Multi-factor on just your highest risk or your highest privileged accounts is better than nothing. Your incident response plan's got to be tested. If they're written down on paper and you've never tested them, they're worthless. You could just set them on fire, honestly. Unless your teams know exactly what to expect, they're going to be in a lot of trouble. They're going to be calling you, asking you, is this right? What's happening? How long should this take? And the last one, learning from others, is preparation. So thanks very much for listening to what I had to say today. Like I say, everyone talks about luck in cybersecurity incidents, but it's honestly an opportunity for a lot of preparation. So take what you can. Thanks very much. My name's Ian, and I think John's going to ask me some stuff.